How would you like a wonderful double-smoked andouille sausage with juniper, garlic, cayenne, red pepper flakes, and other seasonings? Smoked, stuffed, in the comfort of your own kitchen. Look at that. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our second installment of the smoked andouille sausage and sausage making process here on Smokey Dave Presents. Enjoy! In our last video, part 1, where we prepared the pork, smoked, chopped, and ground it into our base sausage meat, we made a simple breakfast sausage. Now we will take the same ground base pork and create our andouille sausage links. The first thing we're going to do is to get our sausage casings ready to use. As they come stored in salt, we will first need to rinse them in a few bowls of water and let them soak overnight to loosen up. Here we go. For the spice mix. And remember, there's as many different recipes as there are people who posted recipes. So let's get started. Here we got about 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. I'm using that pre-minced stuff that you can buy in a jar. You can use fresh garlic. I just kind of like this better for these kind of mixes. It just works real easy and it's a little less work. It's still delicious. All right, now this recipe I'm going to read to you is a per pound, but the ingredients you see here are for 3 pounds. I have about 3 pounds of pork sausage. So that's, but what I'm going to read off to you is a per pound spice mix. So we'll start off with our salt. Got 1 teaspoon, or 3 in this case. Regular, this is a sea salt. 1 teaspoon, or 3 in this case, of black ground pepper. Okay, we have a ½ teaspoon of red pepper flake. So 1½ teaspoons here. We got 1½ teaspoon, or again 1½ of fennel powder. Now this is like the fennel seed, but it's ground. So that's one of the ingredients that we really like to have in a sausage. At least I do. Of course, no andouille sausage will be complete without paprika, and quite a bit of it. So for every pound we put in 3 teaspoons of paprika, so there's 9 teaspoons here. And a ½ teaspoon of cayenne, so again 1½ cayenne. And this is our curing salt. Curing salt we're putting in at a rate of 1/5 of a teaspoon per pound. That's 1 teaspoon for every 5 pounds. So here we again have 1½ teaspoons of curing salt. Or no, not 1½. We have 3/5 of a teaspoon of curing salt. You gotta be real careful about that. We don't put too much of that in. And then finally, this final ingredient. Now this might be a little controversial, but I like juniper in my sausage. Juniper will appear in a juniper style sausage, or it can appear in a variety of Polish sausages. But I really like it in my andouille. Now some might claim, well, that's controversial because these basic juniper berries don't grow down that far south, but that's not true. There's a variety of different kinds of juniper. While it is true that the most common one used in gin and stuff grows up north, there is a red cypress, I believe it's called, that grows juniper berries that are used in cooking down in Louisiana. What we're gonna do is these berries have a very, oh yeah, very nice smell. It's the same smell you get off of gin. Little round berries look a lot like a pepper, like a peppercorn, like a large peppercorn. So what we're going to do is we're going to grind those up in here in the mortar. I'll leave links to the junipers too. They're available online, of course, or at your local health food store. I haven't seen them in too many places. Maybe Whole Foods might have them, or certain similar places to that. But certainly online you can get just about anything. We're going to grind this up, and again, the amount of junipers I'm using is approximately 3 teaspoons. So 1 teaspoon per pound.
Now that we have our dry ingredients all mixed together, and I did set the garlic aside because that was wet, we're going to get our pork ground. And just like before, we got the pork down to 32 degrees and all of our grinder parts in the freezer. And look at that beautiful grind we're getting. And I'll just throw the garlic on top of this. I didn't really want to get that into the dry ingredients and mess them up. So let's get this into the proper mixing bowl, and we'll get mixing.
So our temperature is below 35 so that the fat won't smear while we mix. All right, we've already put our garlic in here. Now we're gonna put in our seasoning mix that we made. So I'm just gonna shake that over the top. I'm not gonna put it all in at once. Get it hooked up on here. So we're going to use beer as our, now this is about 3 pounds, so about 1/3 of a cup. I'm not going to measure. I'm just going to pour some beer in, just a little bit. Get this mixing at our lowest speed. We want to mix this until it starts to stick and make like a paste. That's what we're looking for. More beer in. That looks about right. I put about 1/2 bottle in here for 3 pounds of meat. In other words, it's your standard 12 ounce, so it's about 6 ounces of beer in there. I've in the rest of the spices.
The meat is now at the consistency we're looking for. It's very sticky, it's sticking to the walls of the bowl. We want to be able to take a golf ball size wad of meat and hold it in our hand and flip our hand upside down and have it stick to it. This is what we need to fill the casings properly. The grinder can also be used to stuff the sausage, and while it's not as easy to use as a dedicated sausage stuffer, it does work. In any case, we need to get the casing onto the horn, and that can be a little bit tricky. Make sure the horn is wet and run some water through the casing you're using. Then slip the open end of the casing onto the horn and slide the entire casing onto the horn bit by bit. And this is where it can get a little bit tricky because these are made from intestines, and so they may be of different sizes, and so you have to make sure you're using the right size horn. I'm using a medium size, the middle size I have here. And when you get to the end of the casing piece, you're going to tie off that end. You'll also need to use a thin wire or poker and prick a hole or two into the casing at the end to prevent it filling with air as the grinder starts pushing sausage mixture into the casing. It can be a bit tricky tying that off too.
Hey everybody. Some YouTuber guy who's supposed to be a guru told me that if you want to get a lot of views, you gotta show your eyes. You can't be always hiding behind those glasses. Okay. You know what to do, ladies. And get your friends to subscribe too. And while you're at it, check out the link for my new t-shirt. If you're gonna cut the cheese, just make sure it's Smokey Days. Oh yeah. You know you want one. And now back to the video.
As you can see here, I have the grinder set up to perform the stuffing of the sausage, but I wanted to demonstrate why we need to poke a few tiny holes in the casing. As the grinder in stuffing mode starts pushing the mixture into the casing, all the air inside the unit will go into the casing first. We need to get that out, as you can see here. So I'm just going to use my thermometer and poke a few tiny holes. You can use like a cake tester or a thin wire of any kind that's clean, of course. The grinder is not chopping the meat in any way, by the way, when we do this operation, as I installed the stuffing plate, which is the plate that has very large holes, usually 3 large holes, so the mixture just pushes through and into the casing. This is just using the auger of the grinder to push the mixture into the casing. I'm going to get the casing back tight on now that I've got a few holes poked in, and we can begin. Now I'll be using the mixer at its slowest speed rather than the high speed we used when we were mixing and grinding before. I'll need to hold the casing as you see I'm doing here, and I'll need to hold it loosely with one hand to keep it stuffing in a proper width on our casing. If I hold it too tight, the casing will inflate too much and can burst. If I don't hold it tight enough, I'll have a loose amount of meat inside the casing. It won't fill it properly and it'll be full of air pockets. And I have to do that with one hand while I use the other hand to continuously fill mixture into the hopper at the top. And this is the reason why a dedicated sausage stuffer certainly makes things a little bit easier. But of course, if you're not making sausage all the time, doing it this way is just fine. And of course, if you have a second person to help you, that'll make it even easier. But you really have to keep your eye on that casing as it's coming out. Don't forget to put a pan underneath to catch your sausage as it continues to lengthen and fill up with meat. All right, I'm done stuffing the sausage. I got a lot of these casings left. I'm just going to pour that into a colander and then put it into a vacuum pack full of salt, just like they came. And then I can put it in the refrigerator or into the freezer, and they'll be ready for the next time we want to make some sausage. I'll leave links in the description where you can buy hog casings too.
All right, so now that we got our sausage length, what we want to do is we want to kind of make a mark. I'll just use this pen here. I'm just going to put a little mark right there, because we want to make all of our lengths approximately the same size. So we'll measure it off, put a little pinch, just like that, kind of pinch the meat into the thing, because we want to kind of get the casing where we can just twist it up. 1, 2, 3. So 3 twists. We'll do the next one. And traditionally what you're supposed to do is do the twist in the opposite direction the next time. 1, 2, 3. And we basically just want to get these together. And then once they're together, we'll do this little number here where we do that. Just kind of tie it off. Don't really need to tie it, because this stuff, once it dries, the casing, it becomes like a solid piece, which allows us to then cut the sausage pieces. 1, 2, 3. And after we can cut it, it will stay together. It won't start leaking the meat out the end. And there we have it. So, here we go, folks. We'll put all these back in here in their length form, and we're going to put this in the refrigerator and let it kind of dry out overnight.
The sausage is dried overnight and it's ready to get the hot smoker going. So got some charcoal in there with a little bit of fat wood. I'll be throwing in some apple and oak in there as well as the smoking process goes on. So get this lit up and get started.
we want this temperature to really only be up to about 200 degrees max. So we'll close the inner damper all the way. We'll leave the outer damper completely open. Most of the heat's going to go right out the chimney, because for this we don't need much heat. There you can see the inner damper is fully closed.
We'll get that heat set to about 200 degrees inside. So I'm putting in a hanging bar for the sausages, and I have 2 sets of links that'll be hanging. We'll keep them right in the center of the box. And they're going to be in there for several hours. They have to get up to an internal temperature of 160 to 165 degrees. So I'm hanging those sausages in the smoker with care, with the hopes that Andouille Sausage soon will be there. But it is going to be dark by the time these are ready. But that's okay. Slow and steady wins the race. Whew. Now I'm going to hot smoke these sausages for about 4 hours. Normally, I'd be smoking quite a bit more sausage than this, but for the video, that's okay. You saw the color as they went in, and it's 4 hours later, and you can see that beautiful dark brown color on that, and the sausages have reached their proper internal temperature of 160 degrees. So because of that, it's time to take them out, and we're going to dunk them in some water, as you can see I'm doing here. And the reason we do that is we need to cool them down quickly. We need to do this because if we don't, they'll continue to cook and lose moisture, and then the outer casing will get wrinkly and very tough. We certainly don't want that. We do want to have our sausages pop when we bite them, but we don't want it to be a tough skin at all. So I'll meet you back up in the kitchen. And I patted them off, and I just set them in the oven for just a few minutes at about 250 degrees just to get them dry. And we're going to wrap them in parchment, put them back in the pan, and back into the refrigerator they go to dry age for 48 hours. And at the end of that, they're ready. Two days later.
All right, let's take a look at our sausage. It is now aged, dry aged, 2 days, and it is ready to eat. Let's examine it a little more closely, shall we? Get rid of this. So each of our sausages here. We got a little bit of gel that came off of some of these. That's not a problem. Yeah, we got kind of a stripe here. We got the light side where they were touching. And had I done this as a straight link smoke, which I perhaps should have done, but let's take a look at the inside. Now look at that. That's a beautiful andouille right there. Sure we get a close up of that. Now look at that. But the truth is in the taste. Oh yeah. A little bit spicy. Good layers of smoke. Definitely taste a bit of the juniper. Little heat from the red flake. Delicious.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's adventure in sausage making. In our last 2 episodes, we made breakfast sausage, and we learned the basics of making sausage, and then we made our delicious andouille. We're going to use that andouille in an upcoming video when we make gumbo. So stay tuned for that. That should be a delicious adventure. And I'll see you next time on the next video. And don't forget, it's no joke. Everything's better with smoke.